Everyone. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Legal Darshan. In today's video, we are going to discuss the case number 4 in the list of AOR leading cases for the AOR examination 2025. Now, this case is titled as SharadBirdhiChandSarda versus State of Maharashtra. Now, this case is one of the landmark judgments in the evidence law of India, and this case is dealing with two facets, one being the dying declaration, which was Section 32, Clause 1 of the Indian Evidence Act, and in the new Bharatiya Sakshi Adhiniyam, it is Section 26, Clause A. Right, and the second facet is the Panchsheel rules, which are the 5 rules for circumstantial evidence. Right now, what is happening in this case? There is a couple married to each other, husband, wife, and the wife and husband are undergoing strained relationships. Strained relationships. So, to cut the long story short, what is happening in this case? The marital relationship is falling apart. There is a possibility, there is a doubt to the wife that the husband is having an extramarital affair outside. She has not been treated fair. The depression of her marriage, the anxiety of her failing marriage is converting into her mental agony. She's constantly lonely, she's constantly depressed, and one day what happens, that she passes away, and the postmortem report reveals that she had been administered a poisonous substance, potassium cyanide. Now, what is happening in this case? Well, because when she was with her husband, she did not wake up. She just passed away sleeping, and there is a presumption arising here. There is a facts are point there are facts which are pointing to that it might be the husband who administered potassium cyanide to the wife. Now, the court herein is looking at the two possibilities in this case, because what court is looking at, what are the evidences before it. So one day the wife passes away, and the postmortem report says that she has consumed uh, an intoxicating substance, a hazardous substance, potassium cyanide. But there is no proof as to the fact that whether that poisonous substance was administered to her by the wife. Now, when we know in the criminal law, we know that in the evidence law, when there is a criminal case, the prosecution is the one who should be establishing the proof. Prosecution, the onus of proof lies on the prosecution, and prosecution should, be the one to prove the case beyond reasonable doubt. For civil law, we do have preponderance of possibilities as a standard of proof, but in the case of criminal law, the standard of proof is the proof beyond reasonable doubt. Because in India, the penological aspect in Indian penology or penal system is that we believe in the principle of innocent until proven guilty, right? Because the court believes that you can leave 99 people to save one person who is falsely accused, or who is not the offender at all. So that is why what is happening in this case also, when the women named Manju, who is the wife of the accused, she is intaking the poison is administered to her. There are two possibilities. One, that maybe she took the poison by herself, or there is a possibility that her husband administered it to him. So, administered by husband or by the accused. That is also the possibility. Now, there are two possibilities in this case. So, what is happening later on? The first question that is being decided. So, what basically was the chain of events was that before 3, 4, 5 months of her death, before few months of her death, she was posting letters to her friend, to her sister, that she's not happy in the marriage, that she is undergoing several mental issues, several anxiety, several depressive episodes, and she is being treated like servant. She's being treated, pardon me, she's being treated cruelly by her family members in her matrimonial home, and therefore one day she passes away in her matrimonial home. Now the court is looking now the court is looking at the scope of uh, dying declaration. The first question before the court here comes, that whether the letters she has sent to her sisters, or whether the letters she has sent to her friends, whether they form the part of dying declaration under the section 32 of the Indian Evidence Act. So section 32, which is now section 26 of the Indian Evidence Act, tells that when the statement is made by a person as to the cause of his death or as to any of the circumstances of the transaction which resulted in his death, in case in which the cause of the person's death come to the question, in that case the statement which has been made by the deceased becomes relevant. Now court here is looking at that whether those letters who were sent to the relatives, to the friends, to the sister by the wife Manju, whether they will fall in the section 32 ambit or not. Now section 32 court herein is explaining section 32. It is one of the wonderful explanations that has ever been given to section 32 initially. Now section 32, the court herein is saying that it is an exception to the rule of hearsay evidence. Now when we start studying evidence, evidence is basically premised on the fact that hearsay evidence is not a good evidence, it is not admissible. So for example, what is hearsay evidence? If you tell me that Mr. X stole Mr. Y watch, and I tell Mr. Z that Mr. X stole Mr. Y's watch, and Z goes and makes a statement before the court says that we will not believe it because it is a hearsay, because you are not a direct evidence, an eyewitness to it. Okay. Now, hearsay is a bad evidence, but section 32 is an exception because it is saying that it is the statement of a person who is dying. Okay. Now, the statement is not merely given to anyone, but it is the last statement of the person who is making it. Okay. And then it is important that it is believed that a person on the deathbed will generally not lie. So that is why the court herein is saying that it hearsay evidence do have an exception, which is the dying declaration. The court further is saying that we do. Now what is happening here, the person who is making the statement, the person who is dying, giving a dying declaration, cannot be cross examined. So law of evidence say that if there is no cross examination of a person who is given the statement, he is not cross examined by the person who against whom the statement is made, that won't be a good statement, that would be valueless. But again, dying declaration is coming as an exception to this rule as well, because we believe that a person will not lie on or will not make a false statement when he himself is on the deathbed. Now in this case, what is happening? So if we look at section 32, the court is saying cause of death. Now the term here is used cause of death. It is not used whether it is a murder, whether it is a homicide, or whether it is a suicide. So court herein is saying that this dying declaration not just pertains to merely murder or merely killing or homicide of a person. That for example, if X is dying and before dying he makes the statement that Y stabbed me 100 times, that is the murder or that is the homicide. Okay, that may be the homicide, but the court herein is saying that this death here is has a wider ambit, and it can also include suicide, because ultimately death is happening. So the statement that has been made before the death of the person can also be statement that can be inferred to look into the facts of suicide as well. It is not just it is only pointing at murder or culpable homicide as a cause of the death. It can also indicate, it can also leave some pointers with respect to suicide, okay, which is relevant. So the fourth point herein is saying that section 32 clause 1 or section 26A clause, which is in the Bharati Sakshi Adhiniyam now, it does not speak of homicide alone, but includes suicide also. Hence, all the circumstances which may be relevant to provide a case of homicide would be equally relevant to prove a case of suicide. Now, fifth is where the main evidence consists of statement and letters written by the deceased, which are directly connected or related to her death and which reveals a telltale story. The statement would clearly fall within the four corners of section 32 and therefore admissible. Now, what is happening in this case? There is a series of stories that the wife Manju, the deceased wife Manju, is writing to her sister. So she is sharing the agony, she is sharing her pain through the letters every day to her sister. Now, the court herein is saying that it does not matter what was the time. The distance of time will not make the statement irrelevant, because they will be considered in the ambit of section 32 of the Evidence Act, and section which is now the section 26 clause A of the Bharatiya Sakshi Adhiniyam. Okay. Now, second, this is with respect to the dying declaration. So one question we are determining here is whether the letters she sent to her relatives, whether they are forming a part, whether they are having some relevancy under Section 32 or the dying declaration provision in the Evidence Act. The court answered in affirmative. Now, second question is that what is happening now? We need to look into the chain of evidences, chain of the facts before us. So in this case, there can be two possibilities. One is that the wife Manju herself took the poison, because it is not a big deal that a person who is undergoing such mental illness or such mental issues, pardon me, not illness, it's issues, such mental issues, such mental hazards, and such mental conditions, she might be become mentally weak, and she might resort to mechanism like end her life. Okay. And at the same time, we cannot also rule out the possibility that her husband gave her the poison. But for her husband to give her the poison, we need to look in few facts. Now, in this case, the court observed that there was nothing significant to prove that husband has the poison, that chemical potassium cyanide in her presence, in his possession. Okay, he did not have it. There was no evidence proving that. Number one. Number two, the defense also said in this case that the day she died, the day the wife died, Manju died, next day after it was the engagement of the accused sister. Okay, so the husband's sister was to be engaged the next day. So the court is also looking at the possibility that when the husband knew that the next day her sister is going to get engaged, why would he kill his own wife? Why would he make such a chaos just before her sister, just before the day his sister is getting married, right? And then there was also one evidence saying that the mother of the wife of the deceased Manju, she owned a plastic factory, and chemical named cyanide was being used in the factory. So there were certain hints that what if the wife procured potassium cyanide herself and administered it to her. Now here, what is happening? There is no concrete, there is no, number one, there is no direct evidence, there is no direct eyewitness. The only thing, the only availability is the availability of circumstantial evidence, which can help to establish the case and which can help to make the case strong. Okay. Now, this is a very well settled principle of law that when once there is a possibility of benefit of doubt, okay, when the case might be proved against the accused and might be proved against the defense, we can give benefit of doubt only to the accused. Now, this is all stemming up from the principle of innocent until proven guilty, and the standard of proof which we put in criminal cases, which is proving beyond reasonable doubt, leaving no probability, no possibility that accused might not have done this case. Now, when we have a direct eyewitness, when we have a direct evidence, that the problem does not arise. But in this case, we do not have an eyewitness, so we can only rely on the circumstantial evidences. Okay. Now the court herein is determining the Panchsheel principles. Okay. Now these Panchsheel principles, the court is also relying upon Hanumant versus State of MP, and the five golden principles. The Panchsheel principle, the court is giving that how will you connect circumstantial evidences together so as to establish the guilt of a person are these five. Okay, so the first one is the circumstances from which the conclusion of guilt is to be drawn should be fully established. Okay, there should be no possibility, no lacuna. Okay, second is the facts so established should be consistent with the hypothesis of the guilt, and the accused, that is to say, they should not be explainable on any other hypothesis that the accused is guilty. Basically, this rule is saying that the hypothesis that says that there can be some other possibility also needs to be properly eliminated so that only one possibility remains, only one conclusion remains, that accused has done such an act. The third is circumstances should be of a conclusive nature and tendency. So there should be conclusivity, there should be no space for any doubt, any lacuna to come in. Fourth is they should exclude every possible hypothesis except the one to be proved. Okay, so the one hypothesis to be proved here is that the accused committed murder or the accused administered poison. So every other hypothesis, whether she committed suicide, is also an hypothesis. This has to be answered in negation. This has to be answered that no, it did not happen. The only possibility of happening is accused did the offense. Okay. Fifth is there must be a chain of evidence so complete as not to leave any reasonable ground for the conclusion consistent with the innocence of the accused, and must show that in all human probability the act must have been done by the accused. Okay, so chain of evidence should be such complete, it should be such conclusive that it only establishes, it only proves one hypothesis, that accused has committed this crime, and leaves ground for no other possibility. The moment any other hypothesis is there, the moment any other possibility of any other hypothesis is there, circumstantial evidence chain will break, and the guilt of accused will not be established in criminal cases beyond reasonable doubt, and hence he cannot be convicted. So this is happening in this case as well. The chain of evidence does not suggest a very conclusive proof against the culpability of the accused, and hence the court released acquitted the accused in this case. So this was one landmark judgment of SharadBirdhiChandSarda versus State of Maharashtra. Recently, also in January 2025, the Supreme Court has given a judgment relating to circumstantial evidence and has reiterated what has happened in what has been held in SharadBirdhiChandSarda's case. Thank you, everyone. This was it for the discussion. I hope the discussion was useful for you. For more such videos, especially relating to the AOR examination and on any other content you may want me to cover, please feel free to be on the channel. Please feel free to write to me at legaldarshan@gmail.com. Please keep liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. Thank you, everyone. Have a very nice day.